we're reading through 1 Samuel and other things. And we're about to get into the interesting character of Saul, the first king of Israel, and the fascinating psychology of Saul, and especially later his relationship with David, and his Nixon-like meltdown, for those of us old enough to remember. But today I want to talk about something in 1 Corinthians. So I'm going to screen share, and we will go to that. Okay. This is Paul talking about something that, let me tell you, if you try to do anything for the church, you can relate to this. Beginning there with verse 7, the paragraph, who serves as a soldier at his own expense? Who plants a vineyard and does not eat its grapes? Who tends a flock and does not drink the milk? Do I say this merely on human authority? Doesn't the law say the same thing? For it is written in the law of Moses, do not muzzle an ox while it is treading out the grain. Is it about oxen that God is concerned? But surely he says this for us, doesn't he? Yes, this was written for us, because whoever plows and threshes should be able to do so in the hope of sharing in the harvest. If we have sown spiritual seed among you, is it too much if we reap a material harvest from you? If others have this right of support from you, shouldn't we have it all the more? But we did not use this right. On the contrary, we put up with anything rather than hinder the gospel of Christ. I don't know why people in the church are reluctant to be realistic about anything. Paul makes the case here that he has a right to claim support. He who preaches the gospel should live by the gospel. But he renounces that claim so that no one suspects him of having merely financial remunerative motivations, pecuniary motivations. He doesn't want anything to stand in the way. So to the Jews, I became a Jew. To the Gentiles, I became a Gentile. I have been all things to all men, so that in all ways I might preach the gospel of Christ and save those. All things to all men. He doesn't want anything to stand in the way of the gospel. He has a right and a claim to say, you should support me financially. Instead, he makes tents and subsidizes his ministry, you might say. Now, we know in general things are a mess in the church. Protestant, Catholic, probably Eastern Orthodox as well. It's a mess. One of the symptoms is if you do something that in the secular world would get you remuneration and reward of some sort, you will be expected to do it for free in the church. And the story I tell in my book is we had someone who wanted to bring one of my shows with a cast of 4 from St. Louis, Missouri, where we live, to northern Maine. I was able to give him a quote of something like $2,900, including travel, for 4 people who had day jobs to go all the way to Maine and back with no nearby airports, with a set, lights, costumes, sound system. I mean, that's a ridiculous amount of money. We would have been losing money on the show or barely breaking even. Even just the travel alone was going to cost close to that. That was my quote, just under $3,000 for that show. And the guy came back and said to me, oh, we could never pay that. That's the salary of our part-time youth minister in a year. So on the one hand, you have the fact that they're not willing to pay me and my actors. But worse than that, you only pay your youth minister less than $3,000 a year? This becomes the Catholic ghetto, or maybe the Protestant ghetto, or whoever. I mean, people watch these videos who are not necessarily Catholic. But it becomes the Catholic ghetto. So what happens is the consumers are not willing to pay, and the producers, therefore, cannot produce anything of quality. And then the consumers get used to the roach-infested slumlord conditions. So the producers produce garbage and the consumers consume garbage. I'm talking about the devout Catholic market where there's such little material of good quality. Nobody's willing to pay for it, and therefore the producers produce poor stuff, and then the consumers get used to poor stuff and become even less willing to pay for it, and it's a vicious circle. Now, I could, like St. Paul, do what we have done in the past, and that is perform for free. We performed probably 200 different performances of the Journey of St. Paul during the year of Paul. We performed at least, I'm trying to think of how many we performed for free. Maybe only 50 to 100 for free, totally free. We were subsidized by Ignatius Press in those days. They were very generous. The next year I said, well, let's charge a little something. If we had 50 parishes book us for free, the next year we had about 3 willing to pay something, a nominal token. You might say an honorarium. Why is it that in the real world, people pay me very good money to perform interactive comedy, murder, mystery, dinner theater shows? It's like pulling teeth to get people to pay us to do Theater of the Word Incorporated, Christian comedies and dramas. Now, one of the reasons is, who wants to go see a Christian comedy or drama? Nobody. It sounds bad to begin with. But if you do want it, why is it beyond your capacity to understand that it's as real as anything else in the world? That God is as real as anything else in the world, more real, the highest reality, the source of all reality. With that in mind, let me share something else. Since I'm ranting, we're going to go to my Psalm, filter by bookmarks. And I just want to kind of, those of you who, okay, that's Psalm 26. Okay, here we go. Those of you who don't have the pleasure of going to a suburban mass every week, this is what happens to you. Here's a beautiful song of David. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? I can't hear those beautiful words without thinking of the sappy, lifeless, weird, cloying, disturbing, sickening, make your skin crawl tune that it's set to. Most of the time that's played at Mass. I won't even sing it because then I won't be able to get the stupid tune out of my head. The music at our Masses is deliberately designed to make people think that it's all about us, it's all unreal, it's all make-believe. The very melodies are set up for that. That stirring, those stirring words, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Imagine the music that can be set to when you have a whole history of musicians setting scripture to tremendous and stirring works of music. And yet we hear what we hear. And those words are drained of all glory and dignity and integrity and manliness and solidity and reality. At any rate, tonight we have a show. We might get killed. I talked about this in the last video. But if we get killed, I hope at least they send the check to my wife so she can cash it, who's back home in St. Louis, where it's cold.